She thought she had lost her chance to be a mother forever, until one desperate plea at her doorstep changed everything. A bond was about to form that would cross boundaries no one dared to imagine. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The vast Texas plains stretched under the scorching summer sun of 1873. Martha Wilson wiped the sweat from her brow as she hung laundry outside her modest homestead. Her husband Thomas had been gone for 3 days, hunting to replenish their dwindling food stores. Their small farm sat isolated on the frontier, miles from the nearest settlement of Oakwood Creek. Martha paused, squinting at the horizon. A figure approached on horseback, moving slowly through the heat waves rising from the parched earth. Her heart quickened. Comanche raids had become less frequent since the treaties, but isolated homesteads remained vulnerable. She reached for the rifle Thomas had taught her to use and positioned herself on the porch, watching intently. As the rider drew closer, Martha could make out a Comanche warrior hunched over on his horse. There was something unusual in his posture, not threatening, but desperate. In his arms, he carried a small bundle. "Stay back," Martha called out, her voice steady despite her fear. "State your business." The warrior stopped 30 paces from the house. Now Martha could see his face clearly young, perhaps 20 summers, with pain etched across his features. He slowly extended his arms, revealing a tiny infant wrapped in deerskin. "Help," he said in broken English. "Baby need milk. Mother dead." Martha lowered her rifle slightly but remained cautious. "Where did you get that child?" "My son," the warrior replied. "Wife die in birth. 2 days ago. No food for baby." Martha felt her breasts ache in response to the infant's weak cries. She had lost her own baby just months before, a stillborn boy who never drew breath. Her milk had come anyway, a cruel reminder of what she'd lost. "Please," the warrior said, his dignity giving way to desperation. "I am Swift Hawk. I will give anything. Baby will die." Martha made her decision, lowering her rifle completely. "Bring him here," she said. Swift Hawk dismounted carefully, cradling the infant. As he approached, Martha could see the baby was tiny, his skin pale despite his heritage, his lips cracked from dehydration. "Give him to me," Martha said, setting aside her weapon and reaching for the child. The baby felt like nothing in her arms, so light and frail. His cries were barely audible now, a bad sign. Martha settled into her rocking chair and unbuttoned her dress. When she guided the infant to her breast, he latched immediately with surprising strength. Swift Hawk watched, relief washing over his features as the baby began to nurse. He knelt on the porch steps, head bowed. "Thank you," he whispered. "Great Spirit led me here. What's his name?" Martha asked, stroking the baby's dark hair. "No name yet," Swift Hawk replied. "Our wait 10 days. Make sure Spirit stays." Martha nodded, understanding the practicality of not naming children too soon in a world where infant death was common. She had learned that lesson the hard way. "I am not your enemy," Martha said softly. "You and your son can rest here. There's water for your horse in the trough." Swift Hawk hesitated, then nodded. "I will make camp there," he said, pointing to a cottonwood tree near the house. "Not inside. White man's house has bad air for Comanche." Martha didn't argue. She continued rocking, feeling the strange sensation of a child at her breast again. The baby suckled until he fell asleep, his breathing stronger now. As twilight fell, Martha prepared a simple stew, bringing a bowl to Swift Hawk. He accepted it with solemn gratitude. They sat in silence as the stars emerged, the baby sleeping peacefully nearby in a makeshift cradle Thomas had built for their lost child. "Your husband?" Swift Hawk finally asked, looking around cautiously. "Hunting," Martha replied. "He'll return tomorrow or the next day." Swift Hawk nodded. "I will be gone before he returns. White men do not like Comanche near their women." "Thomas is a fair man," Martha said, though uncertainty crept into her voice. The tensions between settlers and native tribes ran deep, with atrocities committed on both sides. Perhaps, Swifthawk replied. But my son needs milk for many days. I must find a Comanche woman who can feed him. Martha looked at the sleeping infant, feeling a connection she thought had died with her own child. Let me help, she said quietly. Stay until he's stronger. I have milk that no child is using. The warrior studied her face in the firelight. Why would you help Comanche? Martha touched her empty womb instinctively. Because a mother's heart knows no boundaries, she said simply. And neither does a hungry child. That night, Martha slept fitfully, waking at the slightest sound from the baby. Swifthawk remained outside, keeping vigil under the stars. As dawn broke, Martha found herself wondering what Thomas would say when he returned home to find a Comanche warrior and his infant son seeking refuge on their land, and his wife offering the most intimate care to a child not her own. The next morning arrived with a gentle breeze that offered brief respite from the Texas heat. Martha awoke to the sound of the baby's hungry cries. She hurried outside to find Swifthawk attempting to soothe his son, pacing beneath the cottonwood tree. Let me take him, Martha said, extending her arms. The Comanche warrior relinquished his child with visible relief. As Martha nursed the infant, she noticed how much stronger his suckling had become overnight. He's improving already, she remarked, stroking his cheek. Swifthawk nodded. You have good milk. Strong. Martha felt an unexpected pride at his words. He needs a name, she said. Even a temporary one. The warrior considered this. In your language, perhaps ... Little Hawk? Little Hawk, Martha repeated, testing the name. It suits him. Their morning passed in a strange, peaceful rhythm. Martha tended to her chores with the baby swaddled against her chest. Swifthawk disappeared briefly, returning with a freshly killed rabbit, which he skinned and prepared with practiced efficiency. You hunt well, Martha observed as he spitted the meat over a small fire he'd built. All Comanche hunt from time they walk, he replied, but I was best among my brothers. Martha wanted to ask more about his people, his wife, how he had come to be traveling alone with a newborn, but she hesitated, unsure of the boundaries between them. Swifthawk seemed to sense her curiosity. My wife was Singing Bird, he offered quietly. Very beautiful, very strong. The birth took too much blood. Nothing medicine woman could do. I'm sorry, Martha said, genuinely feeling his loss. I know something of that pain. Swifthawk glanced at her questioningly. I lost my baby boy, Martha explained, her voice catching. He never took a breath. Thomas and I had tried for 3 years to have a child. They sat in shared silence, united in grief despite the vast differences in their worlds. By midday, the distant sound of hoofbeats announced a rider approaching. Swifthawk tensed immediately, reaching for his knife. It might be Thomas, Martha said, though her husband wasn't due back yet. She picked up Little Hawk and moved toward the house, gesturing for Swifthawk to stay back. The rider came into view not Thomas, but Martha's nearest neighbor, Ethan Cooper, a grizzled former soldier known for his hostility toward Native Americans. Martha's stomach knotted with dread. Stay hidden, she whispered urgently to Swifthawk, who had already melted into the shadows behind the barn. Martha Wilson, Cooper called out as he approached. Thought I'd check on you with Thomas away. His eyes narrowed as he noticed the bundle in her arms. What's that you're holding? Martha thought quickly. A baby I'm caring for. Woman passed through yesterday, very ill. Asked me to mind her child while she sought the doctor in town. Cooper dismounted, skepticism written across his weathered face. Strange I didn't see any woman on the trail. Where'd she come from? South, I believe, Martha replied, keeping her voice steady. She was barely coherent with fever. Cooper stepped closer, trying to peer at the infant's face. Martha turned slightly, shielding Little Hawk from view. Mind if I water my horse? Cooper asked, already moving toward the trough. Of course, Martha said, heart pounding as he passed dangerously close to where Swifthawk had disappeared. Cooper took his time, glancing around the property with obvious suspicion. Thought I saw some unusual tracks leading here. Almost like moccasins. The ground's hard as rock with this drought, Martha countered. Probably just shadows playing tricks. Cooper grunted noncommittally. Thomas should have taken you to town while he hunted. Not safe for a woman alone out here. I manage fine, Martha said firmly. Cooper mounted his horse, still scanning the property. I'll be back tomorrow with some of the men. We've had reports of Comanche in the area. Best check your property thoroughly. Martha felt cold despite the heat. That's kind, but unnecessary. Thomas will be home soon. Better safe than sorry, Cooper replied, tipping his hat. Indians can't be trusted, especially around white women. After he rode away, Swift Hawk emerged from hiding, his expression grim. We must leave before sunrise, he stated. That man has hatred in his eyes. Where will you go? Martha asked, suddenly afraid for them. Little Hawk needs regular feeding. Swift Hawk looked toward the distant hills. My band camp's 3 days' ride north. There are nursing mothers there. 3 days is too long without milk, Martha protested. He's still too weak. They fell silent, both aware of the impossible situation. Finally, Martha spoke. Take me with you. Swift Hawk stared at her in disbelief. The journey is dangerous. Your husband. I'll leave Thomas a letter, Martha interrupted. I'll explain that I'm helping a motherless child, that I'll return in a fortnight. Once Little Hawk is stronger and has another nurse, you can bring me back. White woman with Comanche will be killed if discovered, Swift Hawk warned. And this baby will die without milk, Martha countered. I've made my decision. That evening, Martha wrote a letter to Thomas with shaking hands, explaining her choice without mentioning Swift Hawk's heritage. She packed minimal provisions and her warmest shawl. As darkness fell, she nursed Little Hawk again, marveling at how his presence had awakened something within her that she thought had died. We leave before first light, Swift Hawk said, watching her preparations. You are brave, Martha Wilson. Not brave, she corrected quietly, just following my heart. Throughout the night, Martha barely slept, listening for approaching riders and wondering if she had lost her mind. Was she abandoning her husband and home for a Comanche infant she'd known barely a day? Yet when she looked at Little Hawk's sleeping face, she knew she couldn't choose differently. In the darkest hour before dawn, Swift Hawk appeared at the door. Time to go, he whispered. Martha took one last look at the home she had built with Thomas, then secured Little Hawk against her chest in a sling made from one of her shawls. With a deep breath, she stepped into the unknown, following Swift Hawk into the shadowy landscape beyond everything familiar. They traveled through the pre-dawn darkness, Swift Hawk leading his horse with Martha and Little Hawk riding upon it. The warrior moved with silent efficiency, covering their tracks whenever possible. As the first light of day brightened the eastern sky, they had already put considerable distance between themselves and the Wilson homestead. Martha's thoughts turned constantly to Thomas. He would return to an empty home and her hastily written letter. Would he understand? Or would he believe she had been taken against her will? The possibility that he might organize a search party, or worse, a raid against Swift Hawk's people, weighed heavily on her mind. How much farther today? Martha asked as they paused near a small creek around midday. Swift Hawk surveyed the landscape before answering. We make camp at Medicine Rocks by nightfall. Hidden place. Safe. Little Hawk had been remarkably quiet during their journey, sleeping against Martha's breast and waking only for feedings. Now as she nursed him in the shade of a scrubby mesquite, she noticed his color improving, his tiny fingers grasping at her skin with increasing strength. He fights to live, Swift Hawk observed, pride evident in his voice. True Comanche spirit. He's a remarkable baby, Martha agreed, so young to endure such hardship. Swift Hawk sat nearby, whittling a small piece of wood with his knife. Like his mother, she was very strong. Martha hesitated, then asked softly, Will you tell me about her, about Singing Bird? For a moment, she thought he might refuse, but then Swift Hawk began to speak, his English halting but expressive. Singing Bird was daughter of respected medicine woman. Very smart, could read signs of weather, plants for healing. Her voice ... will quotes he paused, searching for words. Like water over stones. Beautiful when singing to stars. We married 2 summers ago, after I proved worthy to her father. His knife continued its steady work on the wood as he spoke. She wanted many children. Said she dreamed of son with eagle's eyes. When baby began to come, she was happy, not afraid. But something went wrong inside. His hands stilled. Too much blood. No way to stop it. I'm so sorry, Martha whispered, understanding the depth of his loss. Swift Hawk nodded once, resuming his carving. She told me to keep baby safe. Her last words. They continued their journey shortly after, the afternoon sun beating down mercilessly. Martha's body ached from the unaccustomed hours of riding, but she said nothing of her discomfort. Compared to Swift Hawk's loss and Little Hawk's struggle for survival, her pain seemed trivial. As promised, they reached Medicine Rocks by dusk, an unusual formation of weathered boulders, creating natural alcoves and shelters. Swift Hawk led them to a hidden grotto with a small spring bubbling from the rock face. We rest here, he explained. No fire tonight. Cooper and others may search. Martha settled into a sandy hollow, her back against the cool stone. Swift Hawk arranged branches to conceal the entrance to their shelter, then took up position where he could watch the surrounding terrain. You should sleep, he told Martha. Tomorrow is longer journey. Despite her exhaustion, sleep proved elusive. The unfamiliar sounds of the wilderness coyotes calling in the distance, the rustle of nocturnal creatures, kept her senses alert. Little Hawk slumbered peacefully beside her, occasionally making tiny sounds that tugged at her heart. Swift Hawk, she whispered after a long silence. What will your people think of you bringing a white woman to your camp? He remained motionless, gazing out at the star-filled sky. Some will not trust. Others will understand. Our chief, Black Buffalo, is wise man. He judges by actions, not skin. And what of Little Hawk? Will he be accepted, having been nursed by me? Swift Hawk turned to look at her, his expression softened by moonlight. You save his life. This makes bond stronger than blood to Comanche. He will always carry part of your spirit. Martha contemplated this, finding unexpected comfort in the thought. In her world, a child belonged to its birth parents alone. But perhaps there was wisdom in recognizing the connections formed through acts of nurturing and sacrifice. In my camp, Swift Hawk continued, there's widow called Morning Star, lost baby to fever last moon. She has milk still. She will help with Little Hawk. The mention of another woman potentially nursing Little Hawk stirred complicated emotions in Martha. She had known from the beginning that their arrangement was temporary, yet the thought of relinquishing this intimate bond created an unexpected ache. That's good, she said finally. He needs a Comanche mother to teach him your ways. Swift Hawk studied her face in the darkness. You have mother's heart for him already. Martha couldn't deny it. In just 2 days, the tiny life dependent on her had become precious beyond reason. I lost my own child, she said simply. Perhaps caring for Little Hawk helps heal that wound. 2 wounds healing together, Swift Hawk observed, yours and his. Dawn arrived with a breath of cooler air, momentarily relieving the summer heat. They set out early, Swift Hawk more vigilant than ever, frequently stopping to listen and scan their back trail. By mid-morning, Martha noticed dust rising in the distance behind them. Swift Hawk saw it too, his body tensing. Riders, he said grimly. Maybe 4, maybe 5. Cooper, Martha whispered, fear clutching at her throat. He said he'd return with men. Swift Hawk's decision was immediate. We separate. I draw them away. You go north with Little Hawk. He pointed to a distant line of trees marking a creek bed. Follow water there. Stay hidden. But you, I am Comanche warrior, he interrupted. Can outride any white man. Meet you at Split Rock when safe. He quickly showed her which direction to continue after the creek. Martha clutched Little Hawk tighter. Be careful. Swift Hawk helped her down from his horse, then handed her a small knife. For protection. He looked at his son one last time, touching the baby's head gently. Keep him safe. Before Martha could respond, Swift Hawk mounted and rode deliberately toward open ground, where he would be visible to the approaching riders. Martha watched as he paused atop a rise, making certain he was seen, then galloped away to the west. Heart pounding, Martha secured Little Hawk against her chest and began walking swiftly toward the distant trees, constantly glancing back to see distant riders changing course to pursue Swift Hawk. "Your father is very brave," she whispered to the sleeping infant. "And we must be brave too." Martha reached the creek bed by midday, her dress hem heavy with dust, her throat parched from the journey. Little Hawk had begun to fuss, hungry and uncomfortable in the heat. Finding a secluded spot beneath overhanging willows, she settled against a tree trunk and nursed him, all while straining to hear any sounds of pursuit. "Hush now, little one," she soothed as he whimpered between feedings. "We must be quiet as church mice." The water in the creek flowed shallow but cool. Martha dampened her handkerchief and wiped Little Hawk's flushed face, then her own. According to Swift Hawk's instructions, she needed to follow this waterway north until it forked, then take the eastern branch towards Split Rock, a landmark she hoped would be obvious when she saw it. As afternoon waned, Martha continued along the creek bed, using the trees for cover. Her legs ached fiercely, unused to such exertion, but fear of discovery kept her moving. Occasionally she thought she heard distant hoofbeats, causing her to freeze in terror. But each time the sounds faded or proved to be nothing more than the wind. "Your father will find us," she whispered to Little Hawk. "He knows these lands far better than any settler." By evening, Martha was fighting exhaustion. She had seen no sign of the landmark Swift Hawk described, and darkness would soon make travel impossible. Finding a hollow beneath the tangled roots of a massive cottonwood, she created a makeshift shelter, using branches and her shawl to conceal the opening. As night fell, the temperature dropped dramatically. Martha wrapped Little Hawk in her petticoat and held him close for warmth, her own body shivering as the cold seeped into her bones. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by every nocturnal sound and the baby's occasional cries. Dawn brought fog rolling along the creek, providing welcome concealment, but making navigation more challenging. Martha forced her stiff limbs into motion, continuing northward while scanning constantly for Split Rock. Little Hawk seemed increasingly restless, his cries more insistent even after feeding. "What's troubling you, little one?" Martha murmured, checking him for signs of illness. His skin felt warm, too warm. Anxiety clutched at her heart. Without proper shelter or medicines, how could she care for a sick infant? By mid-morning, the fog had burned away, revealing a landscape Martha didn't recognize. The creek had indeed forked, but several smaller tributaries created a confusing pattern. Which way had Swift Hawk meant for her to go? As she hesitated at the junction, a sound reached her ears: horses approaching from the south. Martha ducked into the underbrush, pressing Little Hawk against her chest to muffle his fussing. Through gaps in the foliage, she glimpsed 3 riders moving slowly along the creek, scanning the ground for tracks. Leading them was Ethan Cooper, rifle across his saddle. "She came this way for certain," Cooper's voice carried clearly. "These tracks are fresh woman's boot prints." Martha held her breath, horrified by her carelessness. She'd been too focused on the baby to properly conceal her trail. "Damned Comanche must have taken her," another rider commented. "Thomas is beside himself." "Joined the militia search to the west." "Thomas thinks she was abducted," Cooper agreed. "But that letter tells a different story." Never knew Martha Wilson to have an unsound mind before, but running off to help some Indian's brat ain't natural. Martha bit her lip, tears stinging her eyes. The thought of Thomas believing she'd lost her mind or worse, willingly abandoned him, was almost unbearable. The men continued discussing their search plans, eventually deciding to split up to cover more ground. Cooper would continue along the eastern fork directly toward where Martha needed to go. Once they departed, Martha remained hidden, Little Hawk's fever concerning her more by the hour. She couldn't risk movement with Cooper ahead, but staying put meant delaying treatment for the increasingly sick infant. As dusk approached, Martha made her decision. She would travel by night, using the stars for navigation as she'd seen Swift Hawk do, keeping to the creek for water, but staying away from its exposed banks might allow her to bypass Cooper undetected. Night fell, bringing a crescent moon that provided just enough light to travel by. Martha wrapped Little Hawk securely and began her careful journey, each step measured to minimize noise. The baby's fever had grown worse, his tiny body radiating alarming heat despite the cool night air. "Stay with me, Little Hawk," she whispered urgently. "Your father is waiting. You must fight." Hours passed in anxious vigilance, Martha constantly listening for sounds of the searchers, while monitoring Little Hawk's labored breathing. Near midnight, she glimpsed a distinct rock formation silhouetted against the starry sky, a tall spire with a visible split down its center. Split rock at last. Approaching cautiously, Martha searched for any sign of Swift Hawk. The area appeared deserted. Had he already been here and gone? Or had something prevented his arrival? Martha found a protected alcove at the base of the formation and settled there with Little Hawk, bathing his feverish body with cool water from her canteen. "Please," she prayed aloud, "don't take this child too." The night deepened, stars wheeling overhead as Martha kept vigil. Little Hawk's condition continued to worsen, his cries weakening to whimpers. Martha felt utterly helpless, singing softly the lullabies her own mother had once sung to her, tears streaming down her face. A subtle shift in the darkness alerted her to another presence. Martha clutched the knife Swift Hawk had given her, prepared to defend the baby with her life. "Martha Wilson." The voice was familiar, Swift Hawk materializing from the shadows like a spirit. "Thank God," Martha sobbed as he knelt beside them. "Little Hawk is very sick. He needs help." Swift Hawk touched his son's forehead, his expression grave. "Fever spirit," he confirmed. "My people near. Medicine Woman will know what to do." He helped Martha onto his horse, placing Little Hawk carefully in her arms before mounting behind her. They rode through the remainder of the night, Swift Hawk guiding his horse with unerring confidence despite the darkness. As dawn broke, they crested a hill overlooking a secluded valley where several tipis stood in a protective circle. Smoke rose from morning fires, and Martha could see figures moving about the camp. "My people," Swift Hawk said simply. Their arrival caused immediate commotion. Warriors approached with weapons ready until Swift Hawk called out in his native tongue. Women gathered, their expressions curious and wary as they beheld the white woman cradling a Comanche infant. An elderly woman emerged from the largest tipi, her face deeply lined but her movements still spry. She approached directly, her gaze fixed on Little Hawk. "My grandmother," Swift Hawk explained. "Greatest medicine woman of Comanche." The old woman examined the baby without touching him, then spoke rapidly to Swift Hawk, who translated. "She says fever spirit strong but baby stronger. She can help." Martha reluctantly relinquished Little Hawk to the medicine woman's care. Swift Hawk led Martha to his family's tipi, where she collapsed in exhaustion while his grandmother worked to break the infant's fever with herbal remedies and ancient prayers. Hours later, Swift Hawk gently woke Martha. "Come," he said. "Grandmother asks for you." In the medicine woman's tipi, Martha found Little Hawk sleeping peacefully, his fever noticeably reduced. The old woman gestured for Martha to sit beside her. Through Swift Hawk's translation, the medicine woman spoke. "You have mother's milk and mother's heart for this child. The spirits brought you together when both were suffering. This creates powerful medicine. Will he recover?" Martha asked anxiously. The old woman nodded confidently. "He will grow strong. 2 worlds in his blood, now Comanche and white. Difficult path, but special power." Martha stayed with the Comanche for 7 days, nursing Little Hawk back to health alongside Morning Star, the widow Swift Hawk had mentioned. Rather than jealousy, Martha found unexpected kinship with the Comanche woman who had also lost a child. They shared the care of Little Hawk, each recognizing the healing this brought to their wounded hearts. On the 8th day, Swift Hawk approached Martha as she sat watching Little Hawk, now fully recovered, being held by Morning Star. "Your husband searches still," he informed her. "Time for you to return." Martha nodded, knowing this moment would come, yet feeling the separation like a physical pain. Will I ever see Little Hawk again? Swift Hawk considered her question carefully. Next summer, when moon is full in grass-growing month, we will come to Big Oak near your home. You can see him then. Martha pressed her palm against Little Hawk's cheek one last time. Grow strong, little one, she whispered. Remember that somewhere you have two mothers who love you. The journey back took 2 days, Swift Hawk guiding her to within sight of her homestead before they would part ways. In the distance, Martha could see Thomas moving about the property, his shoulders slumped with worry. Thank you, she said to Swift Hawk, for trusting me with your son. The Comanche warrior regarded her solemnly. Thank you for giving him life. My people will tell story of brave white woman with mother's heart for generations. Martha watched as Swift Hawk disappeared into the landscape before turning toward home, prepared to face whatever consequences awaited. As she approached, Thomas spotted her, dropping his tools and running to meet her with disbelief and joy etched on his weathered face. Martha, my God, Martha! He cried, gathering her into his arms. I thought I'd lost you forever. I had to help a child, she explained, clinging to him. I couldn't let him die, Thomas. Her husband held her at arm's length, studying her face. Cooper and the others said you'd gone with a Comanche warrior. They wanted to form a war party. The baby would have died without milk, Martha said simply. His mother was gone. What else could I do? Thomas was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he sighed deeply. My Martha, always with a heart bigger than good sense. He drew her close again. I'm just grateful you're home safe. That night, as they lay in their bed, Martha told Thomas everything about Swift Hawk's dignity in seeking help for his son, about Little Hawk's struggle to survive, about the promise of a reunion the following summer. Will you go? Thomas asked quietly when she finished. Martha turned to face him in the darkness. Would you stop me? After nearly losing you once? Thomas reached for her hand. I reckon I'd go with you. Any child that means so much to my wife is worth meeting properly. Martha felt tears of gratitude welling. Perhaps there was hope that boundaries between peoples might someday dissolve, one act of compassion at a time. As she drifted toward sleep, Martha thought of Little Hawk, now with two mothers from different worlds, and Swift Hawk, a warrior who had humbled himself to beg for his son's life. Some bonds, she realized, transcended all differences, formed in moments of shared humanity when hearts recognized each other across the divides that separated them.